this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. I call to the podium Peachtree City's Library Director, Jill Prouty.
Thank you. Do we have, oh, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so it is my honor and gosh, I don't even know what to say to call it at this point. It's been a long time coming, right? Authors, we've been working on this project since 2018. If you'll go ahead and, okay, so this project began back in 2018 with a writer's workshop that we did with Hannah Palmer. She wrote a book called Flight Path, The Search for Routes Beneath the World's Busiest Airport. Here's a copy right here. And basically the book, Hannah calls herself a writer and an urban designer. And Peachtree City is mentioned briefly in here, but it was mainly about her search when she returned home after college and after getting married and finding that the houses that she grew up in, there were 3 of them that were gone and they were all replaced by the airport. So it's about a search for, you know, the old neighborhoods and some of the old places in East Point, College Park, Hateville. So anyway, she came and did a writer's workshop for us that summer, and the theme was writing about home. And during that workshop, we asked folks to write about things that happened to them in Peachtree City, places in Peachtree City. It could be going on a walk in Peachtree City, their story of moving to Peachtree City. And one of the stories that came out of it was Mary Maud Heastand's Where in the World is Peachtree City, Georgia, which is part of our introduction to this anthology that I'm going to unveil tonight. But anyway, she read her essay to us, and it has the refrain throughout the essay, where in the world is Peachtree City? And it really spoke to me personally because I lived here in the early 80s, and I remember hearing that all the time. Anytime you left the Fayette County area, people would ask you, where in the world's Peachtree City? And the answer was, you'll find this out too, it's just down the road from the Atlanta airport. So, and in contrast today, you don't hear that as much. And just a little story, 2014, I was on vacation up on the border between Maine and Canada on the St. Croix River, and I met another couple there, and he saw me wearing this Peachtree City hat, and he said to me, I know all about Peachtree City, and he went on to tell me how it was just down the road from the Atlanta airport and blah, blah, blah. So things have changed. So anyway, that inspired me, and somebody mentioned, it might have been Hannah, said, hey, you ought to put a group of stories together and publish an anthology. And I thought, yeah, great, this sounds exciting. So go ahead and come to our next slide. Okay, so the original idea was, this was back in 2018, that we would put something together and publish it in 2019 for the city's 60th anniversary. You can see that didn't happen. We started the editing. I gathered a group of editors together, and then by the fall we realized, hey, this is a lot harder than we thought it was going to be, and things weren't going real well. And then come spring 2020, COVID hit. And you would think, oh great, you have lots of time now, right? We're not going to be open. Well, there was a lot we didn't know about COVID at that time, and there was a lot of planning we had to do in order to reopen. So I didn't get a whole lot done with the anthology. Then come the fall of 2020, I had heart surgery, 8 weeks gone. So spring of 2021, started making some real progress again on it. And then Omicron in the fall of 2021. How does that affect us? Well, a lot of our folks were sick. And when people are sick at the library, I'm working out on the desk. I'm not, I say the public service desk. I'm not in my office working on editing somebody's work. So, in the spring this past year, last year, during the spring is when it really, really started to progress, take shape. We were getting excited. In the spring, we started hiring more people back at the library, so I really got more time to work on this project. And then we get hit by COVID again, including my family. So, unfortunately, I had to keep emailing all these folks that are here tonight to say, I'm sorry, it's not going to get done again. But here we are. So go ahead. Okay, so as you know, we missed the target for the anniversary in 2019. So what are we going to call this thing? What are we going to do? It occurred to me that, we can make this a literary journal. A lot of colleges and universities put out, quarterly or biannual journals, literary journals. Here's just a few examples. There's the University of Georgia. They put out the Georgia Review. Georgia State puts out New South. And the University of Nebraska, that's my alma mater, and they put out Prairie Schooner, and I subscribe to that. And let me just point out here that these covers are kind of weird, are they not? I mean, you see the New South there, it looks like it's oysters, and then Prairie Schooner, you probably can't see, but the boat there has like Mickey Mouse and Goofy on it. And so it's about art, it's about creative expression. And you'll understand why I'm telling you this as we move forward. Go ahead to the next slide. So I started looking, okay, are there literary journals published by other public libraries? Not many, 7 or 8 maybe nationwide. This is the first one in Georgia, I found out. But here's just a sampling of some that are out there. You have Colorado, Pennsylvania. There's one library in Florida that puts them together. Again, look at those covers, they're interesting. So, next slide. Okay, here we go. The Friends of the Peachtree City Library present Hip Pocket. It is now available from Amazon. The paperback is $10. You can get it on Kindle for $3.99. All of the proceeds benefit the Friends of the Peachtree City Library. What is that picture, you may be wondering? That doesn't look like Peachtree City, does it? It's not supposed to. That's actually a photograph by fine art photographer Donna Rosser, who is also one of our writers, and it's a picture of Lake Peachtree when it was empty back in 2014, I think. So yeah. So anyway, now what are you going to find inside of this thing? First of all, you are going to see that we have. Well, let me back up just a moment. Why did we call it Hip Pocket? Hip Pocket, I've always thought, was an interesting name for a street, right? And just so you know the story, in case you don't know, Joel Cowan, our first mayor, and I call him our boots on the ground founder, he and Chip Connor, who was our third mayor, it was the first residential street, and while they were bulldozing the path for it, Chip pulled out some kind of tool from his hip pocket, and so the name stuck. So I love the story behind it. I like the sound of hip pocket. And it just so happens that our longtime library manager, M.T. Allen, lived on Hip Pocket Road. So if you'll go to the next slide. So we're dedicating this first issue, we're going to do more, to M.T. Allen's memory. And I found some old pictures of her today. That one on the left there, you see Jimmy Booth is on the far left. And Fred Brown is the tall one in the back, and there's M.T. And I just found that clipping, the newspaper clipping there, because I thought that picture was so cute of her. So anyway, we just thought it was fitting and right that we dedicate this first volume to her. And in just a moment, I'm going to call her daughter up. She contributed a poem about her mother, and she's going to read it for us tonight. So go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so what else is in there? Personal essays. We have a lot of folks who wrote about moving to the city, their reasons for moving here. We have people who wrote about why they decided to move here the first time and why they decided to come back again. There's themes of exploring nature, the path system, and more. We have poetry. We have even some songs written about Peachtree City. This is not a travel guide. I don't want folks to misunderstand that. It is creative expression. And what does that mean? Well, it means you may read some things in there that you don't agree with, okay? And that's all right. This is what this is all about. It is art, it's creative expression, and the ideas and expressions represent the opinions of the authors. We say that at the very beginning. And not the library, not the Friends of the Library, and not the city. However, I have to tell you, it's really a wonderful collection. I think you'll find something for everybody in it. So, Tamara Allen Moore is here tonight, and that is, she's M.T. Allen's daughter, and she has written a poem that appears in our dedication section at the very beginning of the journal. So, Tamara, are you, here she is.
Okay, the pictures kind of took me by surprise, so that's okay, that's okay. Good thing I don't have to read a big essay. And by the way, thank you. Mom thought so much about you. I really do appreciate this. I want to take a deep breath. Anyway, we lost Mom, if you haven't figured it out, and my father's here today. And I'm going to speak a little bit later about another topic, but I think I can, again, the pictures kind of took me by surprise, and it actually looks like me now and my daughter. I know, I was like, I think that's me.
And the glasses.
I know, I just started wearing glasses. Anyway, thank you so much, this is lovely. And the poem I wrote is about my mom. The quiet woman. The secret of the old clock kept its time in two-part rhyme. In the lines of my hands, I see your delicate hands. Your pearls are elegant on their humble strands. The tiny stitches on my green sash badges and in my hems are our special gems. Your humble demeanor was always above reproach, a diminutive self cloaked in a colorful brooch. Your mind was always sharper than your heart. A life of quiet and shadows was always your part. Just read the last sentence.
It's the best part. If I had a page for every time I thought of you, I would walk in my library forever. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Tamara, for reading that beautiful poem. So now we're just going to call up each of our contributors one by one, and they're going to come. They haven't seen this until tonight, so everyone is going to get their complimentary copy. And then we're going to, if you will, when I call your name, please come up, get your book, and stay up here because we're going to get a group picture. And let me grab my box. Okay, Kimberly Bostick. Oh, Tamara, come on back up. Lauren Bazone. You're welcome. Mary Chapman. Patricia Cruzan. There you go. Petra Engish. I haven't seen her. Okay, Mark Gelhart. Oh, do we have next? Bonnie Helander, I know she's not here tonight. Mary Maud Heastand. Where in the world is Peachtree City, Georgia? Sika Karmakar. There you go. Sika's not here. Mike Crabiel. Sharon Marcasello, I know she's out of town. Tamara's here. John Oakey. There you go. Ashley Pierce. Donna Rosser. I know the Soapers are out of town. Tricia Stearns. Ryan Strader. Connie Tomey. Ellen Alkin. Rosemary Walden. You're welcome. And Tom and Rebecca Watts are not here tonight. So, do we have our photographers? Do we need to squish in? Yeah, how do you want to do this? Squish in? Hey, Mary Jo. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Are we squished in enough?
I think squish in.
Squish more?
Squish more. Squish more. Squish more. Squish more. I'm gonna take my glasses off.
And here is number 2. Cheese. Got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Just real quick, let me make just one more plug. Two things. Order your books from Amazon, as I said. You can find it there. Just type in if you just type in hip pocket, you're going to get a lot of literally tools for your hip pocket. Okay, type in hip pocket anthology, and it'll come right up. The other thing is, as I said, we're going to actually. There's one more slide. There will be a volume 2. We're talking about maybe doing it every other year. It does take a lot of time. I underestimated that, definitely. But I think we can work quicker this time because we've learned a lot of lessons in how to do it. And I think we'll probably end up calling it the Hip Pocket Review, which is really exciting because our local writers, it gives them an opportunity to showcase their talent. And so if you have stories that you would like to share about your time in Peachtree City, consider submitting. We'll probably open up submissions again next fall. So thank you.
Can we purchase one tonight?
Those are for you. Those are complimentary copies. There you go.
And
Buy some for friends and family, though. They make great Christmas presents, birthday presents.
that's right. And if you're an author and you haven't signed my copy yet, I will catch up with you. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. Thank you so much. What a great project. All right. Announcements, award special recognition. I'd like to call to the podium Wayne Fowler.
There we go. With me tonight is Past Commander Lee Blood. I'm also a past commander. And Mr. Gilhart over there is also a past commander. We got a bunch of them. But every year we get the opportunity to present an award from the American Legion to a member of our local police department and firefighting department. And every year our city's departments have been fantastic in nominating their people for this award. The way the thing kind of flows, and I'll try and make it quick and easy, is they give us the package, and they can give us multi-packages, and then we choose from those if we get multiples. And whoever we pick, we present an award to them at the post level. Then we submit that package up to the department headquarters of the state of Georgia from the American Legion, where they get judged against the firefighters and law enforcement officers presented by the other posts in the state. And Lee, what was it, around 300 and something posts now?
About around 250.
250, okay. And so they select a winner from each candidacy for the state of Georgia. And a lot of fun for the individual when comes. They get celebrated for almost 2 years in a row. And then that winner gets submitted to national, and they compete nationally. And then they get an award from national headquarters in Indianapolis. And those two awards, the state one is presented at the state convention. And the national one is presented at the national convention. And the winning officers and firemen get to go to the convention, and they're celebrated at the convention for ever how many days it is. It can get long on the national one. So this year your city came up with two excellent candidates. A little historical fact for you. Peachtree City has taken state, I would say somewhere around 6 out of 12 years. 50%. Not necessarily in both departments, but that just speaks to the quality of our firefighters and police officers and their leaders and our city government. That's why we have such good departments. So Zachary Pye, Officer Zachary Pye. Here we go. I can't get over telling people this one over and over, because when I got this gentleman's package, his nomination package, I opened it up to the first page and read the name, and I went, that's Captain Pye's son. That's cool. Oh, by the way, I told people earlier, you're more handsome than he is. So, you are our Law Enforcement Officer of the Year for Peachtree City. And Lee, this is his package if you want to present that. And here's your plaque. And we're going to read that out. You can hold it.
I'll hold this part.
Right. You can do anything with it after you
Okay.
get it. Yeah. The American Legion Law Enforcement Officer of the Year, presented to Officer Zachary Pye on this 16th day of March 2023 by American Legion Post 50, Peachtree City, Georgia. In recognition of your loyalty, devoted service, and leadership in upholding the principles of the American Legion for God and country and service to Peachtree City citizens in supporting and protecting them while enforcing the laws and statutes of Peachtree City, Fayette County, the state of Georgia, and our nation. And now I'm going to let you do the presenting. I'll just stand there and look pretty.
It's a real honor and a pleasure.
You want to join us, Chief Bud?
No, this is his moment.
Okay. Take her to dinner.
While I have captive audience here, about 4 months, 4 or 5 months ago, we had a turnover of a house on the cul-de-sac street where I live. The lady that used to live there passed away, and her son had a yard sale and cleaned the house out, put it on the market, and this young man bought the place. He was not very sociable. He kept to himself, and was just weird. It was just very uncomfortable. We didn't know anything about him or who he was, and eventually he purchased himself a big guard dog, changed it to a tree in his backyard. When he got to that point, a neighbor who shared the backyard fence actually called the Peachtree City Police for the mistreatment of the dog. Turns out this young man that was occupying the house had a couple of warrants from out of state. Was not supposed to have any drugs, and he had a lot of drugs. Not supposed to have any weapons. He had a lot of weapons, including a flat vest and a full bit. I mean, this guy was armed to the teeth. And my trusted partner here woke me up about 2 in the morning, dragged me downstairs, and I looked out the window, and here was Peachtree City Police with 4 or 5 cars with the headlights on, lighting up the house. They had it surrounded, and they were carting this young fella off. And we feel a whole lot safer on our street. Thank you very much for your service, and thanks for protecting us. Good job.
Yep. I'm gonna go ahead and let the cat out of the bag for the firefighter, because he had to be out of town. And so it's firefighter Edward Russman is the firefighter for the year. So we're gonna find an opportunity down the road within the next month to present his award to him. Figure I'm gonna offer him 2 options: another shot at the city council, or maybe doing it at one of the fire stations with a bunch of the firefighters there. We've never done that before, so, and I just thought of that and thought that might be a fun thing to do. So thank you, everyone.
Do we have public comment?
We currently have 8 individuals sign up to speak. The first person signed up to speak is Margaret Ross.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Ross. We live here. I'm wearing green this evening to remind myself and the City Council of the importance of us to continually look for opportunities to save citizens greenbacks, to save tax-paying citizens money. And this would be money of every associated election cost. The key points here are a bottom line and the given item. Business feasibility studies usually have 5 parts. Part 1 is usually pre-analysis. Part 2, technical. 3, financial. And organizational. Our friends in Milton, Georgia did a feasibility study for their metropolitan area, municipal area, and they focused on a single slice of a feasibility study. They focused on the saving slice, or the potential for a saving slice of their, so they actually did a savings feasibility study. So what's the bottom line? I said the bottom line and the given. The bottom line is a question we need to always ask ourselves, which is, what can we do, and associated with elections, what can we do to save our tax-paying citizens money? That's the bottom line question, and it's critically important. The given is the funding source. And so, what is the funding source? Well, something they all have in common, the funding source, as we looked at opportunities to save. So whether it's in a budget line spreadsheet, a budget item, in a municipal spreadsheet, or if it's in a budget item in a county spreadsheet,
Your time has expired. Thank you for your comment.
Shut, that's okay.
okay, or if it's in a budget item for a state spreadsheet, they have the same thing in common. Who pays for them? And that's why we're wearing green. So this evening, we want to highlight a few findings of our pre-analysis for that stage of a feasibility study. In May, we're going to request the City Council vote for us to have our own savings feasibility study. And we ask in advance that all the members vote yes. And why do I think that you'll want to vote yes? Because truly, I can't imagine anybody that I've met that's up there that wouldn't be interested in seeing if we can save our citizens money. And I can't imagine anyone up there who would want to infer that you weren't interested in saving your citizens money. Thank you. Kathy?
Thank you. Next public comment.
Next person signed up to speak is Kathy Vaught.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Kathy Vaught. I'm a veteran, a Fayette County resident, and a trained and experienced poll watcher and ballot adjudicator. I've also volunteered my time to assist with election research for us to share a few early savings indicators this evening. With inflation at a 40-year high, and with us in the midst of a citizens-based SPLOST tax election, this is exactly the right time to talk about the importance of actively working to save our taxpayers money on municipal elections, and actively communicate their savings benefit to them in terms of gallons of gas, potentially purchased, or in gallons of milk, or even in tax savings. Let's talk about the cash required for testing, resting, and transportation. I was present and observed what the budget shows as logic and accuracy testing. Approximately $2,000 is spent each time. This would be $2,000 saved if Peachtree City was running its own election and using paper ballots. Resting. Where does the Peachtree City equipment rest? In a rented space. Rent is a line item of potential savings indicators. Buying the election department its own building in Fayetteville may need some financial review. Transportation. The equipment transportation to Peachtree City is gas, rental trucks, and labor that would not be needed. So this is a potential savings area for us to research in our financial feasibility study. This is another potential thousands in savings. And that is just the beginning of our pre-analysis. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Claudia Eisenberg.
Next.
The next person signed up to speak is Claudia Eisenberg.
Good evening. My name is Claudia Eisenberg. My husband and I moved to Peachtree City in 1993 with 3 young children. This has been a great place to raise a family. We have volunteered our time to support our fellow citizens, including looking at savings potential if this municipality ran its own elections and used paper ballots. In 2023, Fayette County families are facing skyrocketing costs on most things like car loan, mortgage rates, the rising cost of rental, and nearly all possible taxes. We see a lifetime of savings and retirement funds have their values crushed. In Peachtree City in 2023, I can buy 1 bag of groceries for the 3 bags I bought in 2020. Pre-analysis show we spend thousands of dollars to pay a Dominion employee to be here each time we run a primary municipal election. This could be thousands more saved. Paper does not require tech support, it does not have downtime, it does not require paying for software, license, update equipment, or warranties. Is this a new or unusual idea? No. 12.3 miles from here, Palmetto, Georgia, we have always run their municipal elections themselves using paper ballots. Why? Because it is the most economical method. 5 North Fulton County cities are moving toward administrating their local elections instead of paying Fulton County to administer the process using paper ballots. This will be a savings to the citizens of these 5 counties. Surprisingly, Fulton County city officials are encouraging these cities to look at other options, including paper ballots. If you may ask if my fellow citizens support a saving feasibility study for Peachtree City. The people wearing green in this room tonight are pro-savings, and we want to sincerely thank them for showing up tonight to support us, and I want to thank you, the City Council, for listening to us.
Your time has expired. Thank you for
Next
your comment.
person signed up to speak is Suzanne Brown.
Susan Brown, I live in Crescent Oak. I'm an experienced poll watcher, poll worker, election judge, and ballot adjudicator. We're asking you to approve a comprehensive savings feasibility study in May. Georgia law says many decisions are ours to make. The law supports us. After revision, we paid $53,810 for early voting labor costs. We didn't need to do voting outside Peachtree City. In fact, they refused to put municipal equipment in Rising Star on Election Day because it's outside Peachtree City. 3 of 4 early voting sites were outside Peachtree City. We could have voted just at the library, double the equipment and staff, and still saved over $25,000. Precinct 20, Windgate, and Precinct 33, Camp Creek, both vote at Evergreen Church. That's 2 sets of equipment in one location. They could have shared one set, sent the other to Rising Star at no additional cost, and what happened at Rising Star would have been avoidable. If people organizing our election don't think or don't care, we suffer. We need to run our own elections because we care. We're beyond the original Dominion contract now. With $50,000 to $70,000 of equipment per precinct, that's between $600,000 and $840,000 in our 12 precincts. Fayette County must pay to replace or repair equipment. They will have to pass that cost on to us if we keep using Dominion, but we don't have to. Switching to hand-counted security paper ballots will save money. The savings could pay for a lot of milk, gas, and eggs. The savings feasibility study will examine all associated election expenses regardless of whether it gets paid by the state, the county, or the municipality. To actually save money, we need to eliminate costs, not just switch who pays for it. We leave you with one burning question. What reason could you have to vote no to doing a savings feasibility study?
Your time has expired.
No
Thank
excuse
you for your
will
comment.
do.
Next person signed up to speak is Joseph Smith.
Hi, my name is Joseph Smith. I live at 124 Summit Walk here in Peachtree City. During the elections, the use of Dominion, Eric, Jarvis, PollPad, Comneck, NoLink in Georgia and exposes Georgia electors' personal information such as address, birth date, social security number, email address, driver's license number, and this information is being stored out of state, out of the United States, and with parties using unsecured cloud environments, which violates state code, Georgia State Code, sections 21-2-211, parts A and B. I do research on election fraud and identity theft. And so we're paying a lot of money to have our information stolen from the citizens of Peachtree City. We should pay less money and be more secure. Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Tamara Moore.
I saw a lot more green out there. I thought I realized
That's fine, wherever you're comfortable.
All right, no promises on the tissues. Hello, Mayor Leonard, City Council members, City Manager Curnow, welcome by the way, and City Attorney. My name is Tamara Moore, and on behalf of my father, Dr. Glenn Allen, and my brothers who couldn't be here tonight, I wanted to speak a little bit about my mom a little bit more. My mother. My mother first took me to the small library building on the lower property of what is now a park and now a common recreation area down from the current library in the 1970s. She then began a long and wonderful career as the first female employee and nearly 40-year-long career as the head librarian. Sounds inconsequential, but she quietly and humbly broke barriers her entire life while there. We lost her to breast cancer in April of 2020, and the city lost a friend and a bright light. Her name was Mary Jean Tortorello Allen, and everyone in Peachtree City called her MT. I would like to make a formal request to rename the library in her honor. We have the Fred, named after former Mayor Fred Brown, who moved to the city after us. My parents were also very instrumental in seeing the amphitheater from paper to opening and beyond. We have bronze busts of the founding fathers in the plaza in front of the library, and you will find my mother in the unveiling pictures. We have state roads named after them, a room in the library named after Mr. Farr, and we vote there. She deserves more than a room. We have parks named after males. There are schools named after males. I was a student at McIntosh. There are fire stations named after great men who worked there. I would love for the library to be named after my mother. We need the library to be renamed for her. My mom broke city barriers. She was a great woman who shepherded the library from a small clapboard building to the prominent city jewel you are privileged to work next to as we speak. She deserved this. It should have been done in her lifetime.
Your time has expired. Thank you for your comment.
Please continue. It's okay.
Just like the Fred, some of the parks, the schools, and the fire stations, and the bus, please consider my request, and thank you for your time.
Next person signed up to speak is John Dufresne.
Mayor, Council, John Dufresne, Preston Chase. Council approved the policy to combine 3 annual resident golf cart registration periods into one 3-year registration period and collect all 3 annual registration fees in one payment the first year. The policy also says the fees collected in advance will be deferred to the appropriate year. According to the generally accepted accounting principles, a payment made in advance is categorized as deferred income and is considered a prepayment for a service to be performed in the future. The deferred income is supposed to be reported in that future period. The city provided me resident registration information for fiscal year 2017 through 2023 as of 23 February. The city received $1,496,415 in resident registration fees during those periods. Of that amount, $944,040 were prepayments for subsequent years' annual registration and was supposed to be deferred. It doesn't appear that $944,000 of deferred fee income was reported in the periods it was supposed to be reported, as there's no transparent internal control to track the money. The conclusion is the prepayment for annual registrations was directed to other accounts for uses other than registering golf carts, and that allegedly is unlawful. The city received payments for future annual registration and licensing services that they did not perform in the years 2 or 3, and apparently diverted that income to other general purposes. Some might consider it fraud to take a prepayment for a service you had no intention of providing. Council should review the policy and make the appropriate changes.
Next person signed up to speak is Keith Larson.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Keith Larson of 509 Plancier Place. You have the opportunity this spring to move forward our community. our previous city manager, who retired, told me point blank at the start of the Citizen Advisory Group for Path Safety, he did not want any citizen input in regards to our number one concern are our residents, and that was path safety. And he did everything to prohibit our advancing path safety. In fact, you cannot go and find on the city website today our briefing of our recommendations to this city council. Moving forward, Mayor, in your campaign, you spoke openly of your intent to restore the Citizen Recreation Committee. That was held up because we were waiting for a new city manager, and I appreciate that. Bob, welcome. During your open house, you spoke at your surprise at the lack of committees, active or advisory groups in our committee. Well, here's a top list. Recreation Committee. It's on the books already. Mayor, let's go. Number 2, traffic and path safety. We know we have a speeding problem in our city. Let's address it right now. The 3rd is Senior Advisory Group. We have a growing population of residents and we're not focusing on our needs. We have many residents ready and willing to volunteer to assist the city in resolving many complaints and move the city forward from a reactive to a proactive stance. Advance the city and restore our resident confidence in the value taken in public comment. Say something tonight, say your resolve. I'm telling you, we're counting on you to lead us forward. Thank you.
There are no additional speakers.
All right, agenda changes?
Mayor, I have one. I would like to pull consent agenda item 3 for a short discussion, please.
A discussion and vote?
If you would like.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Give me one moment. I think we're having some audio issues. Oh, your microphone is muted. Your microphone is muted. If you could please repeat that for the record.
Testing, testing. Can we have your motion?
No.
Yeah, I would move that we pull consent agenda item 3 for a short discussion and vote.
Separately.
Beat me to it.
I have a motion. Is a second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Minutes, February 16th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Mayor, I move that we approve the February 16th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I still can't hear you.
Yeah.
Still can't hear me?
Is it on now?
No.
Now?
Do you mind tapping? Yeah, we're getting some audio issues.
Let me just speak louder. I mean, technology is what it is. Mayor, I would move that we approve the February 16th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do you have discussion?
Yes, there was one change I had mentioned to.
That change has already been made and is
Okay.
in the packet.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Consent agenda items. Number 1, fiscal year 2023 budget amendment, reclassification of municipal court position. 2, fiscal year 2023 budget amendment, CERT grant. Number 4, approval of contract to sell property to Gerresheimer. Number 5, consider compact skid steer loader replacements. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion that we accept items 1, 2, 4, and 5 as read.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Consent agenda item number 3, consider citizen engagement tools and city.
Mayor, we first saw this Friday, or at least I did, in the packet that we received. I didn't know anything about it, but we started reading through this thing, and I want to make a couple comments about it with at least the time that I've had to do a little research in it. And first off, I'm going to say that it's not a Chinese spy company. It is, and this is some of the stuff that I've read and I've had emails about, nor is it Chinese owned. If my research is correct, it's owned by an Israeli firm. And of course, they have investments all across the world, and some of them are in China, but so is IBM. With that,
My bringing it up is not a trust issue, Mr. Kernow. It is a validation issue. And what I would like to see is, instead of adopting it permanently as we're doing, is that we've got a part of a year left on a lesser charge. I think it's $29,000 to run it. And run it for that part of the year, and let's find out what it's worth. If it's well enough to use, then we can make a decision, an educated decision on what it is, and then say, yeah, we want to invest 64 grand a year to do it. And that's what those are my comments on it.
I have some
Mr. Kernow, would you like to update us a little bit on the facts? I know that you are an IT professional for something like 30 years, and maybe you can just shed some light.
Yeah, sure, Mayor. Well, to address Councilman King's concern, so this is a 12-month contract that goes into effect when we sign the contract. So that period of time will be 12 months from that date that it's signed, and within 90 days of its renewal period, either party can attest to no longer continue the contract. So it is absolutely my intent to use this for a period of year, the array of tools that we have selected during this process, to validate how it works against the city, I should say, how it works with the city's data, to determine the best use for us. So it's different. The category and software suite, if you will, has different uses for different cities, and it's has a category, if you will, that you can select and choose different entities, and different cities choose different entities. So it's my intent to look through all of the portfolio and then pick out the ones that we would need and make a determination in a year from now if we should continue.
So are you saying then that we can't do what Councilman King asked, just to do it for?
If we sign up, tonight to do this for this year, do we have a sunset for the program if we need it?
Under the terms of the agreement, it's a 12-month agreement.
Okay.
It has to be canceled. If you don't want to renew it beyond the initial 12 months, we have to give them notice 90 days prior to the expiration date.
Mr. Kernow, is this being used in other cities? I mean, what is your experience with this?
Yeah, so Mayor, I have quite a bit of experience with this. I used it in the city that I came from for many years. It is used in 300 cities worldwide, and it is used in several cities here in our own backyard. I can give you a list. So Savannah, Clayton County, Albany, Peachtree Corners, Rome, Auburn, and South Fulton are currently using it, in addition to major metropolitan cities that are using this tool as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I would just like, when you talked, a lot of citizens don't know that when we spent the time going through about 75 different applicants and narrowing them down to when we finally picked up the current city manager that we have, one of the things that impressed many of us, if not all of us, was that you were a cybersecurity expert. Can you elaborate a little more on your background on being a cybersecurity expert for us?
Sure. So you're asking me to talk computer, and I love that. Thank you. So yes, that is correct. I am a certified information systems security professional. I have been since 2011. I have worked in IT for over 20 years. I was an IT director. I was a systems administrator. I implemented technology, multi-million-dollar technology in large government agencies, including criminal justice system information. I was a local agency security officer and an information security officer in law enforcement applications, and in the previous city that I came for the entire duration of time that I was there for 11 years. I have an extensive IT background that goes all the way back to 1999. Certified information security is one of those. I taught information security, cybersecurity, and I also taught computer forensics at the college level.
And when Mike and I talked several times, we both found the same thing about it being from Israel. And so have you found any of that kind of linkage as well, or did you find something different?
So I have not found any ties whatsoever from this company to China, if that's what you're asking. It is an Israeli company, and it is a company that is considered the de facto standard for the International City Managers Association, in which I am a member. In addition to that, it is a technology that is used, as I said before, in over 300 government agencies, including law enforcement. And being a partner of ICMA is a huge feather in the cap for this organization, and it is something that is highly promoted by that organization as well.
Thank you.
ICMA preferred provider? ICMA.
Yeah, International City Managers Association preferred provider.
All right, any last comments?
Go ahead, I'll go last, you go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, well,
I'll do
I'm
the
just gonna
cleanup.
ask Bob to, I know the goal, and we met, of course, I meet with Bob once a week on Tuesdays, but so everybody here is aware, what is the goal here? What are we trying to do?
Sure, that's a great question. So right now, the information that Zen City aggregates, if you will, or brings back into a single pane of glass or a dashboard is currently information that is in the wild on the internet and on social media currently. So if you posted it on your Facebook or Twitter accounts or any social media accounts, that's publicly available information. So what Zen City does is it listens for keywords for the city of Peachtree City, and it has the ability of bringing that all back to a dashboard. Right now, we have a communications department that is very minimally staffed, if you will. They do a fantastic job, but they spend hours a week combing through and looking at our social media to make sure that we're listening to our residents and we're hearing the things that are going on in the city, and we can be out in front of those. So what this does is it brings it back to a single platform that somebody can monitor, and it gives us opportunities to be proactive, to listen to what the residents are saying out there on social media and kind of hear the buzz, if you will, of our constituents. And we can make sure that we're deploying our resources adequately, and that's what I really want to use it for, the reporting capabilities, is to make sure that if there's something going on in the city that I'm aware of it, and that awareness component is key for me to make sure that we're deploying our resources efficiently and effectively.
Thank you.
Mr. Howland?
Yes, I have a couple of things, Madam Mayor. To add to what the city manager said, I've done my own geek. I've gone out and I've spent at least 3 hours going through and pouring through as many sites as I can to find out if there was ever any connection with the CCP. I found none. I found that Microsoft did invest in this company, as they did with 100 other AI companies of this type all over the world. So it's not something they just said, well, let's go and invest in Zen City. They invested in 100 different AI companies, because that's the next technology, as you all know. Now, on top of that, just because it's Microsoft, who has things all over the world, including China, including all the free world, doesn't mean that their data is being taken up by the Chinese government and used for whatever nefarious reasons that they would do. I can honestly say, what if it was Warren Buffett? You all know Warren Buffett, right? Berkshire Hathaway, good American boy out of Omaha, Nebraska. Would you be all upset if he did the investing in that company? Of course not. There would not be any problem with that. Now, this company is endorsed by the major chief police, let me get it right, the major chiefs of police in the United States. It's endorsed by them. On top of that, by government sites who list all of the sites that are well used throughout the United States by governments. Zen City is in the top 100. So that means that there's been a lot of people out there that have done this kind of background look to see what's going on with Zen City and have taken it on. Last but not least, there are other people out there that do similar things, but based on the research that I did, this is the top one that most cities go for. Yes, there's 2 or 3 other subsidiary type companies that do this kind of aggregation, but not like Zen City. So with that, Mayor, that's my comments.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
Mayor, I'd move that we approve consent agenda item 3, the citizen engagement tool Zen City.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Old agenda item 112202, request to continue the recruitment sign-on bonus through August 2023.
Mayor, we have a short presentation from our Human Resources Department.
All right.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm filling in for Elise Brown, our HR Director, who has an unforeseen medical situation. I'm bringing forward to you tonight the continuation of the sign-on bonus that was first approved August 19, 2021 for a year, and then it was extended for 6 months through February 2023. We are requesting to continue the recruitment sign-on bonus for an additional 6 months until August 2023. It has been a very beneficial recruitment tool. Since the program's approval, we have hired 83 employees who have received the sign-on bonus.
So it works.
It works.
All right. Council questions? Can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I recommend that we go and for item number, old agenda, item number 11-2202, request a continuation of recruitment sign-up bonus through August of 2023.
You said you recommend, you're moving to approve it.
Move to approve. Thank you.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Old agenda item 22305, ordinance 1206 and policy 407, city council meeting procedures and rules. Mr. Curnow, your name is still on this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. We brought this item before our previous council in reference to who can add items to council agendas. And we provided some information in the last meeting, and we have some additional information, and I'm going to ask our amazing city clerk to please give us a presentation on some additional information to bring council up to speed. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good evening, residents. And I do want to apologize. I am freezing, so if you hear my teeth chattering, it's not because I'm nervous. All right, so I'm just going to go over really quickly the ordinances and the policy. As the city manager mentioned, this is an item that was previously on a council agenda. You asked for a little bit more time just to review it, and so now it's back on old agenda items. So currently, the ordinance, there are two sections where this is actually included. There is the code as well as the policies. So in the actual code section pertaining to placing items on the agenda, it says any person may request to have an item added to the agenda. So it doesn't specifically limit to any resident or business owner or developer or organization, nonprofit, religious entity. It's any person can come in and request to have an item added to the agenda. And all they have to do is just submit in writing to the city clerk's office by 5 p.m. on Friday. The conflict is, it's not necessarily a conflict, however, the issue here is that there's another ordinance that actually requires the agenda and packet to be posted by 5 p.m. on Friday. It doesn't leave staff time to be able to put the packet together to ensure that we are making the 5 p.m. deadline on time. The other issue is the policy that we're looking at here. It says public request for an item to be included on an upcoming agenda should be accepted again by 5 p.m. on Friday. So we looked at some other cities just to see what is the commonality on who can put items on the agenda. And so I'm going to go, we actually contacted about 30 different cities or counties, and we weren't able to locate anyone that allowed for citizens or anyone, any resident or any person to put an item on the agenda without any type of vetting process or approval from either staff or putting it on by mayor and council or commissioner. So looking at Fayette County, and they varied. Some cities actually had ordinances, some cities had policies. So looking at Fayette County, it states a citizen may submit a proposal when all other available remedies for the particular situation have been exhausted, which typically means they reach out to a staff or reach out to their commissioners to give them the opportunity to try to resolve the situation. A citizen request will be completed by the citizen and forwarded to the administration department. The county administrator will decide whether or not to place the item on the agenda. So once again, the approval for Fayette County, per their policy, still requires for the county administrator to actually approve the item to go onto the agenda, and nothing prevents a citizen from discussing a specific request or make comments during the public comment period at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners. They have a public comment period just as all cities and counties typically do. Now, also looking at the city of Fayetteville, theirs is not an actual policy. It's actually listed in their ordinance. And it just states that the city manager is the one that actually creates the agenda for the meetings. So again, anyone who would like to have an item added to the agenda actually would submit that information to the city manager. I didn't want to put all 30 organizations or municipalities on here, so I just kind of put a little bit of information because they varied, not drastically. There were some cities that required, or counties that required, multiple council members to actually approve it. So as you look at city of Fairburn as well as South Fulton, they allow for one council member to actually put an item onto the agenda, or the mayor can actually do it, but it varies from South Fulton to Fairburn, because Fairburn actually requires, if any person would like to add an item to the agenda, they do need to get approval from the city administrator, while South Fulton does not allow that. In both cities, again, they do allow staff to add items to the agenda, and it is not by ordinance or it's not by policy, it's actually by ordinance. When we look at Brookhaven and Milton, they actually require for any item to be added to the agenda to have 2 council members that are actually supporting the item before it could be added to the agenda, not just one council member like some of the other cities. The mayor or the chair is allowed to. Again, we see that no person is allowed to add any items to the agenda. And then in the city of Brookhaven, they do require for the mayor's approval for staff to put items on the agenda. Staff themselves are not allowed to just put items on the agenda, versus Milton, which does. And then again, this is by ordinance. Suwannee and Sandy Springs, again, are very similar. They allow one council member to add items to the agenda as well as the mayor or the chair. And the difference, again, is very similar to that of Fairburn, that it requires their district. They actually are subdivided by districts. So each council member actually serves over a specific district. It's not at large, similar to Peachtree City. So they actually have to have their district council person approve the item to be placed on the agenda. In Peachtree City, it's at large, so a resident or any person can actually go to any one of the council members or the mayor to have it added. Staff can add the item, and again, it's in the ordinance. So I work as well as in the public communication department, and we do, as our city manager advised, we do take a look at the information that people are typically talking about online. It does take us some time to find that information. And one thing we have heard regarding this is that this is a violation of the First Amendment right. And what I do want to say is city staff has received training on ensuring that we don't infringe on the First Amendment rights of our residents or of anyone. And so, but there are 4 different types of the forms of First Amendment. So I wanted to play just a clip just to educate a little bit more about what exactly are those 4 public forums that are allowed per the First Amendment. I don't know if it'll play if I hit it. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties.
So the First Amendment and the discussion of the ability to limit speech by the government basically boils down to 4 distinct categories of areas, and each has its own constitutional structure.
Can we pause it while
as to
we're
the
trying to
degree
see
of
audio?
limitations.
We're going to try to raise the volume. In the meantime, I do want to say that this is an actual attorney who specializes in First Amendment rights. He also represents some cities. Ted, you may, his name is Ken Gerard. The training was provided by the Georgia Municipal Association. And so he did come down and provided some training to all of our staff members just to ensure that our employees are not infringing, as I mentioned before, on the First Amendment rights of our citizens. So let's see if we can get that started.
So this is all going to make sense in just a moment. By the way, the photo on the left there and the photo on the right are both individuals speaking. Okay, that is the quintessential public speech. They are, the individual on the right there is in a park. The individual on the left is in the middle of a road. Both of those are considered traditional public forums. In other words, the courts that have looked at this have said, look, for the history of our nation, there are places in the city or the county or the state where people traditionally assemble to speak. Sidewalks, even right-of-ways, public parks,
Is that as loud as it
maybe the
goes?
front lawn of the courthouse.
Can we start it over?
These are places
Yes,
where
we
there
can
is
start it over.
traditional assembly for people to speak. Have you ever heard the phrase, I got up on my soapbox?
Is it coming from over there? It's coming on the speakers.
So the First Amendment and the discussion of the ability to limit speech by the government basically boils down to so the First Amendment and the discussion of the ability to limit so the First Amendment and the discussion of the ability to limit speech by the government basically boils down to 4 distinct categories of areas, and each has its own constitutional structure as to the degree of limitations the government can put on it. So this is all going to make sense in just a moment. By the way, the photo on the left there and the photo on the right are both individuals speaking. Okay, that is the quintessential public speech. They are, the individual on the right there is in a park. The individual on the left is in the middle of a road. Both of those are considered traditional public forums. In other words, the courts that have looked at this have said, look, for the history of our nation, there are places in the city or the county or the state where people traditionally assemble to speak. Sidewalks, even right-of-ways, public parks, maybe the front lawn of the courthouse. These are places where there is traditional assembly for people to speak. Have you ever heard the phrase, I got up on my soapbox? Okay, that's where that comes from. He is on his soapbox to be a little taller than everyone else so he can exhort the crowd and speak. That's what they're talking about here. So the law creates 4 types of traditional fora, which is the singular, which is the plural for the term forums. Going all the way back to ancient Greece, the forums where people can speak. So let's look at what they are. Number 1, a lot of text here, I'll break it down, but number 1, the most what constitutionally sacrosanct or important forum is what's called the traditional public forum. Sidewalk, park areas, place that through history people have always wanted to assemble to speak. That is the area where the courts take the most care to ensure the government does not do anything to limit speech in those areas. In a traditional public forum like a sidewalk or a park, any content-based restriction on speech receives strict scrutiny. Strict scrutiny is a term of art. That is the highest level of constitutional review that exists. So a government can only mess with people speaking in a traditional public forum if they are able to show a narrowly tailored limitation that serves a significant government interest and leaves open ample alternative channels of communication. Let me just make it real clear. If a government attempts to regulate speech in a traditional public forum, 99 times out of 100, it will fail. just the way it is. It's very difficult for a government to survive a strict scrutiny review by a court. Okay, so that's traditional public forum. Let's don't worry about that for a second. A designated public forum. Okay, so it's not a traditional public forum. It's not the city park or the city sidewalks, but it is a place that the government, whichever government it is, whether it's Peachtree City or the state of Georgia, has nonetheless said, okay, this isn't a traditional public forum, but we're going to make this area available for public use to speak. Let's say, for instance, Peachtree City said, we're going to make this room available that anybody that wants to use it and come in and speak or host events to speak can use it. Okay, that would be a designated public forum. And the same rules apply. What the courts would say is, all right, Peachtree City, if you want to make your city a meeting room a designated public forum, that's fine, but you can't restrict the content of those that speak there. You can't say only Democrats get to use it, or only Republicans get to use it, or only this group can't do that. Once you open it up to the public and make it a designated public forum, the same rules apply as if it was a traditional public forum. Don't worry about that. We're going to move on. Now we've got a limited public forum, different than the first two. A limited public forum is similar to a designated open forum, but the public property is limited to use by certain groups or dedicated solely to the discussion of certain subjects. All right, let me tell you about a limited public forum. Does Peachtree City at their council meetings have a public comment section during the council meetings? All right, well that's a limited public forum. Why? Because meeting the legislative body and being able to speak to the legislative body while they're having their meeting is not a traditional public forum. If you were to go try that, go to the General Assembly and just start yelling at them from the back of the room while they're in session, you'll be escorted out. Why? Because the General Assembly and the Peachtree City Council get to have their meetings and get to engage in their meetings and conduct the business of the government without interruption. But Peachtree City, like most other governments in Georgia, have opened up a section of their meeting for public comment. And I'm not talking about public hearings related to zoning. Forget about that. I'm talking about just a public comment section where people get to come up and they get to talk about what? Well, darn near anything. Other than as long as they're not openly cursing or defaming people in real time, the answer is these designated public forums are pretty much open for the citizen to say whatever they choose to say. They typically have, I don't know what your rule is, 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes to say whatever they want to say. That is a limited purpose public forum. And the government in that sort of a forum has the right to actually dictate in some respects content. Look, I want you to talk about City of Peachtree city business. Now, even though you can limit the content in a limited public forum, you can't limit the viewpoint. Does you see the distinction? So we do want you to public comment, and we do want you to speak about Peachtree City issues, but we can't tell you only speak about the good stuff. Don't speak about the bad stuff. Can't do that. Okay, so at a limited purpose public forum, we can sort of control in some respect the content as far as the general categories of things you can speak on, but not the viewpoint. The viewpoint is whatever the individual viewpoint is. All right, so that's a limited public forum. So now we've had three, right? There's the traditional public forum, the designated public forum, the limited public forum, and then the final category are non-public forums. And that is where we are going to end, because that is the most germane, most relevant to this First Amendment audits. Because the reality is, let's get a good definition of what a non-public forum is. Can we agree that governments in the state of Georgia and throughout the nation own a lot of property? Yes, they do. They have health facilities, they have city halls, they have police facilities, they have fire facilities, they've got a water and sewer department, an engineering department, they have a motor vehicle department, they do, cities and counties have fleet services that do oil changes, all sorts of government property. And are you telling me that if the government owns it, I always have the right to show up and I have the right to just begin speaking because it's public property? And the answer is no. Why? Here's why. The non-public forum, okay, so we know that's a non-public forum, consists of government-owned property. Stop. So right now we can know that government-owned property can be a non-public forum. When you hear forum, think a place to speak.
I'm going to stop it there. It keeps going, but we just wanted to make sure that there was some sort of education in regards to the different types of forums.
So the First Amendment...
Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay, so currently, if we look again, we're looking at our current ordinance, where the ordinance actually states any person may request to have an item placed on the agenda by that 5 p.m. time, right before the agenda goes out. What are we realizing? Number one, the city council, per the First Amendment, those meetings are a limited public forum, and that the council can regulate what the content is. Any person, it doesn't necessarily just state any resident, any person can come into the meeting, have an item added to the agenda where staff has no information on what it is, and we technically have to add it. So the recommendation is actually to change not only the time of when items actually are done, but that there's some sort of vetting process to ensure that the content of the information that's being proposed to be added to the business agenda, the agenda of the city council and its residents, have some sort of approval process, which we see here. It states, city staff with approval from the city manager, the mayor, or any council member may request for an item to be placed on the agenda by filing that request prior to the city clerk's office prior to noon the Thursday preceding the council meeting. So that provides staff enough time to ensure that we have a chance to see what's actually going on the agenda. Well, you may read this and say, well, this doesn't really say public can provide information. Well, remember, our policy and ordinance goes together. So then we tie it back into the policy and we update the policy to read that as well. Currently, the policy says public request for an item to be included on an upcoming agenda should be accepted by 5 p.m. There's also some other details in there that talk about the IT department. We're a little bit more technologically advanced, and the city clerk's office can update that as well. Add items and the information to the packet without involving IT. So we're updating some of that information as well. So when we look at the proposed part of the policy, when we're talking about public requests to add items to an agenda, we just state that in order to help ensure that the content of the information that's being proposed to be added to the agenda is content relating to Peachtree City. And we would know that because the information would be submitted to the mayor or at least one council member. It won't be like some of the other cities that require 2 council members to have an approval. This would go to either the mayor or the council member to ensure that there's support. In order for the item to be adopted or voted on, you have to definitely have mayor and council some sort of knowledge of what the item is. And so this also provides just a little bit more time and a process to ensure that the items that are being added are known by the mayor and council. So these are the 2 proposed policies. This is the policy, and then this is the actual ordinance that's being proposed and the changes. And again, we look at the information to be submitted to the city clerk's office by noon, just to make sure that there's time for staff to be able to add items to the agenda. Any questions?
Yes. Would you put the previous slide back up, please?
Sure.
Wouldn't we have kind of fixed this whole thing if we didn't mandate that when an individual puts an agenda item up there, that it automatically had to go to the next city council meeting? It could go 2 weeks later, or perhaps 3, depending on availability or whatever. Now let's just suppose we did that. That would still give any person, if you will, or what I would prefer to see this, any resident, that would be able to place an item as an agenda. You know, and if we did that, you know, they would still have it. You would have time to do this, and we wouldn't have to go through this gyration of putting up there to where they would have to come to one of us or as it reads, a council member has to request to put an agenda item on. I'm sorry, but I ain't requesting it from no damn body. I was elected to represent these people. I'm not going to request it, period. It'll go.
I understand.
Now, wait a minute, let me finish. Second, now the other thing is that when I asked for this thing to be continued to tonight, I asked that we take kind of take a harder look at it, because the frequency of a citizen-generated agenda item, you know, we've had one this year. One. And we dared to have this thing on there of that night a month ago, the 16th of February. And that timing is just simply atrocious, in my opinion. So that said, you know, why can't we just, you know, and I even went back years on the old agenda items. And the last one before Ms. Brown made that thing last month, it was Bill Posey talking about the drop box at this worthless post office we got up here or something. What, you know, and you know, but the frequency of these things doesn't speak to have this thing changed. I know what the First Amendment says, and I really appreciate the constitutional law guy giving me a class. But a citizen has a right to redress. They need to be. This is Peachtree City. If as a citizen I feel like if I have an issue that I need to bring up as an agenda item, I should have that ability to do it. I understand the purpose of your change. It would make these meetings go a lot easier for us, but it takes away the very fact that a person in the United States who needs to approach his government, which is closest to him, which is the municipal government. He can't go to Josh Bonner at the state. He can't go to the governor. Heaven forbid Drew Ferguson can't help him, you know, and the senators are busy. So, you know, this is his first line. He has to be able to do that.
Anything else? Okay. Anything else, Mr. King?
That's it.
So I'm going to address, I wrote down 3 issues. First, you mentioned that they should be able to put any item on the agenda. Well, if they put an item on the agenda, that we could wait a week or 2 weeks. But that doesn't dictate content. So if someone comes in to put an item that has nothing to do with the mayor and council, those items could be added. I mean, there's an unlimited possibility of who can come in and add items to the agenda.
But again, if instead of any person, it said any resident of Peachtree City.
That's my second comment. So you said only residents. Then what about business owners? What about property owners? What about developers? What about churches? What about
put a comma after resident, and then we go to business owners or entities or whatever, private fund guys, whatever. But they need to be associated with Peachtree City. As an example, you have in our Convention and Visitors Bureau, you have non-residents that are actually members of that bureau that we appoint because they have a business in town. And I'm not trying to get to play word games. What I'm trying to do is to allow our citizens and people that do business here to be able to bring something to this council for a decision that they feel enough about it. They're going to have to talk it. They're going to have to convince me it's worthwhile doing, but at least they're going to stand there and take the microphone. That's what this country was found on, not for some government telling me what I can and can't do.
Councilman King, let me say, it is our job as staff to be able to present information to you in a more concise, as you said, comma, comma, comma. Those are not typically things that you would see in an ordinance or policy. So what we have done is sort of drafted information that categorizes, that allows all of those individuals that would be behind those commas to be able to find a solution to bring an item forward. I think that was the only other thing. Oh, you also mentioned that it's not something that was commonly, or that hasn't been an issue in the past. Unfortunately, I've been working here as a city clerk for 2 years, and there have been denials essentially violating this ordinance and policy, and that's all I would say. And so to ensure, now we have the city manager, there are people who asked to have items added to the agenda that were previously denied.
But, I don't know anything about that.
I understand.
But if somebody comes to one of us, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
can I go ahead and make
Yeah,
some
please.
comments, Mayor? If somebody wants to come to one of us and they can't get one of us to say, let's put it on there, I'd like to think of one example where somebody cannot get one of us to agree. So I did a little bit of research, okay, and this is what other cities are voting on. And you'd have to get one of us to do it. And you know what? You might struggle. If you come and you said you want to make Peachtree City a sanctuary city and have tents out on Drake Field, I, for one, I can't speak for everybody up here, I, for one, am not going to agree to it. If you want to provide clean needles for heroin addicts, I, for one, am not going to
Nor would I.
approve it. So are we going to sit there and let somebody do an hour, 2-hour presentation? I mean, again, I can't speak for everybody here, okay?
But
There's other cities that talk about, defunding the police. I don't want to hear it. Now, I can't speak for everybody up here, okay? But are we going to let somebody just come up and go, oh, well, you know what? I want to talk about defunding the police. I want to talk about letting illegals vote in municipal elections, okay? I don't want to, okay? Now, maybe some of the people up here, maybe that's what you want to vote on and talk about, okay? Now, there's things that I think that we should. When somebody comes up and talks about the mailbox issue, Bill Posey, yeah, hey, I'd be okay with that. Firefighter of the Year, yeah, I want to hear about that, right? Law Enforcement Officer of the Year, yeah, I'd like to see that on the agenda.
Backyard hens?
Backyard hens, possibly. It's something we can certainly talk about. The ballots, making ballots where we can save money, yeah, I want to hear more on that, right? And all you need is one. You don't need two. You know, we're not going to vote. We just want to gather information.
But your argument on defund the police or abortion or whatever else you can come up with, American citizens have a right to speak it. You don't have to approve it.
We'll give them 3 minutes. Do we have to hear a presentation on how come somebody,
You
John
can
Q.
limit that
Public,
presentation.
how can you limit it?
You give them 2 minutes for public comment.
The policy doesn't currently limit how much time they have for a presentation.
So let's continue with your comments, and then we have other comments to share.
Yeah, okay, I
Mr.
mean,
Freeborn.
that's the whole thing, and you talk about, there hasn't been issues, well, I've seen some issues in the 7 years I've been on here, where citizens present stuff, I'm like, oh, what is that? And then our city clerk has referred to other times when our former city manager just said, yeah, no, you're not doing that. So if somebody wants to, do we want to put our new city manager in the position or us to go, it'd be up to us. If you can get one of us to do it, all you need is one. If you can get one of us to do it who are elected, then it's worthwhile. If not, then I don't know, is it worthwhile? I'm trying to think of something that none of us would agree to talk about that is worthwhile.
Okay. First of all,
Just a second. Mr. Freeborn, are you done?
I am done,
Thank you.
you.
Mr. DiStadio?
well, first of all, I agree with Mike, especially when he brought it up the first time. When we started this thing, he backed us all up and said, wait a minute, let's take a second look at this. I thought that was a great thing that we did, Mike. We backed up and we looked at what was going on. I don't know how we ever got off on the freedom of information concerns about this, because all of us that served and those of us that didn't serve always believe in the freedom of information. I don't know anybody that doesn't believe in that. So we got that off the table, thank God. But I do believe that when we looked at it, when Mike stopped it, and we were going to take a second look at it, to me that brought back memories, at least the first year that I've been on here, that we had a first read, second read of our ordinances. And I thought that that was a pretty good idea. When we sit there, when we looked at the ordinances, and I mentioned a couple like the dog tethering and some of the things with the security, with the police, I thought it was a good idea that when we looked at the first ordinance, looked at it the first time with the staff. We made comments, go back and forth, and then there was a first read that was in the public, and all the public had a chance to see it. And then we heard from the citizens, and God knows we get to hear from the citizens all the time, which is a good thing. I know I try a lot to answer everybody. I visited people at their site, at their art. Mike and I have even gone down and a couple times together and visited people. So I think the first read, get citizens' input, and then we have a second read because we take their input and we make modifications to it. So one of the things that I was going to be bringing up was, why can't we go back to that process of having a first read and a second read of our ordinances, which gives us an opportunity to get input from the citizens as well as making input from the rest of the staff. So that was one of my concerns. When it comes to whether or not the individuals have the right to come forward and do that, whether you have one person or you have 9 people. You know, Mike's been on the council 9 years. I respect that. But I do think that this was such a hot button issue. Yes, we had one person. I can just see this city taking advantage of that, and all of a sudden we're going to have 10 people every time coming up just because one person was denied or one person didn't get what they wanted. But I agree with Phil. And I also, Mike, I didn't read it the way you did, but I never thought you were going to limit my opportunity as a council person to put something on the. So I don't agree with that, if that's the way it is.
No, that's not correct.
Okay,
You can add the item.
all council people can still put something on the agenda.
That is correct.
So I agree with Phil. You know, if you can't get one person out of 5 to agree with your topic, it's probably not a topic that's necessarily something we want to hear.
To wrap it up, thank you, Mr. DiStadio. Mr. Holland?
Yes, I have a couple of comments. Okay, it's on. I have to agree with my council people here in some parts. Basically, I like the idea of having a citizen, or as Councilman King said, a business owner, a property owner. They may not live here, but they should have the right to come in and put something on the agenda. But I don't want to have someone from New York City deciding to come here and talk about defunding the police. I don't want that. I don't want to waste my time and even rejecting it and hearing somebody come to me and say, Clint, would you please put this on the agenda? It says any person. I would say, let's change that to a citizen, a resident, someone who maybe owns a business here or owns property here. They have a right to come and speak in front of this council.
And give a presentation on defunding the police, a citizen.
They can still do that because they're a citizen here, okay? I think that maybe we ought to just take, instead of putting it on the agenda of the city council, is potentially do it in a workshop basis. So this way, a lot of back and forth can be done in a workshop before it does come on the agenda. So I'm suggesting that would be another change. The third one I have is that, you know, the way it's written now, it basically would go on the next agenda. And there are times when we need to give our staff the time to put together the information so that we get educated on making a good decision with all that detail that they come up with. And I've learned over these last 3 months, I am inundated with good information from our staff. With that in mind, what I would really like to see is that we'd have the right here as a city council to not only just say, put it on the next agenda, maybe we want to put it on a future agenda if it makes sense. 2 months, 2 weeks, 3 months, whatever it is that it takes to put together the information so that we can have an education on what it is they want to talk about. So those are the 3 things that I want to comment on.
And I wanted to add, Mayor, regarding Councilman Holland's comment. If you read where it says public request for an item to be included on an upcoming agenda should be submitted to the mayor and at least one council member. At that time, the mayor and the council member can determine which meeting you could be having conversations with the resident or the business owner. You could be having conversations. However, the item would not come to staff until it's ready to actually be added to the agenda. So that's the next line. The mayor and the mayor or a council member may then request for an item to be added to the agenda. The submission does not guarantee inclusion. So again, once the resident has reached out to you or the business owner has reached out to you and you've had time to discuss it, maybe even discuss it with the other council members, and you feel you have a vote for it, at that time you would then submit it to the city clerk's office. That could be months, weeks. It just depends. There's no requirement for it having to be on the next agenda item, just to clarify.
I understand that. Thank you very much,
Yes.
Kathy.
As an
It was
example,
good.
if I could real quick, Mr. Preble and I would just as soon put them all on the January 24.
73 days.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
But-
So, I mean,
Let's finish up here.
okay, I mean, your suggestion of a workshop kind of format, I don't know, I'd like to think a little bit more on that.
We do workshops. They're open to the public. We're all here to solicit input from the public.
And
We
just to
have-
state, those are also agendas.
Exactly. We have a representative form of government. We're all here to serve. That's what we're elected to do. I expect to hear from our constituents. We all answer our emails. And
So, how long is there a limitation how long somebody can go up and talk about something that,
remember, we're talking about putting items on the city council meeting agenda. How does that mechanism work? Should any person in the city, 38,400 people, be able to send Bob an email and say, hey, I want this on the agenda, whenever it may be? Or are we here to field those requests, like you said, make sure this is something germane, something we think needs to be discussed or not? And that's what we're here for.
I mean, I get that.
Yeah. Can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I tell you that I would like to see item number 02-2305, ordinance 1206, and policy 407, city council meeting procedures and rules. I'd like to see that go to basically the old way we did things, where we had first read, second read, ordinance.
We'll talk about first read, second read in a minute. You have to look at the ordinance. The ordinance proposed is right there. Do you make a motion to approve the ordinance that is proposed? Just a minute.
I recommend we table this until we have a chance to read it further.
I'll second that.
How many more weeks are we going to make our staff jump through hoops? We have amazing things ahead of us, multi-million-dollar undertakings, multi-million-dollar projects. We just gave it a month. How many more times do you think we should drag our staff? Do you understand how many hours our city staff has gone through to get this here today, to bring in an attorney to explain it to all of us? It's time for us to make a decision.
I understand, Madam Mayor, but
If I could, Mayor, if I could get a withdrawal of the second and the motion, I would make a motion, please.
It's up to them. Mr. Cahalan, do you?
I will withdraw.
Mr. DiStadio?
before I do, I'd like to make one comment.
Of course.
We just heard from 3 different council people that had different comments. From Phil Prebor, from Clint, from myself, actually from Mike as well. And I think there was enough comments about different opportunities to do different ways that made me concerned enough that we ought to be looking at it. But I'll withdraw my motion.
Well,
Any last comments, Mr. Prebor?
I mean, I was looking forward to tabling it to keep looking at it.
We just gave it a month.
Okay, well, so,
Mr. King, do you want to make a motion?
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd move that we disapprove old agenda item 22305, the ordinance number 1206 and policy 407, city council procedures and rules.
If there is no second, it dies on the vine. Council, can I get a motion? It dies on the vine. Council, can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion that on item 022305, ordinance 1206 and policy 407, city council meeting procedure and rules, to be tabled for 1 month.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. No.
Opposed. Opposed.
Opposed. 3 of you want to table it? I'm sorry, Mr. Curnow. Motion is tabled. Agenda item 2223CA1, design of State Route 5474 upgrades.
Good evening, Dave Borkowski, City Engineer. We are requesting that council authorize an expenditure of up to $16,000 for rock coring, drilling, and analysis for the proposed enhancements of the sign support structures at the 5474 project. During the February 2nd meeting this year, we brought before council the additional geotechnical funding request that was approved by council for us to design the foundations for the enhanced support structures. They started that work, well, they completed that work, and during the time that they were drilling, they hit auger refusal. Basically, they hit rock in a couple areas. So we had to drop back and punt. Our consultants presented the option to GDOT to avoid drilling in the rock right now. They presented an option to have this done during construction at that time, rather than do the rock coring now. However, GDOT did not approve this request, so we're coming back for this request for additional funds to do this coring and analysis. I had received a proposal today for a lesser amount than the 16,000. They said that it would only be around 10, but I would rather just stick with the 16. That way I don't have to come back again, just in case. So there is funding available for this in the SPLOST 7 project. Are there any questions on this?
Council,
No.
questions? Can I get a motion?
Before, what was the amount again? That way we do it right.
Up to 16,000. It should be less than that.
Okay.
So we'll if it's less than that, we will
Right.
not spend
Mayor,
it.
then I would move that we approve old agenda item 20223CA1, the design State Route 5474 upgrades for up to $16,000.
I think that's a new agenda item, Mike.
Oh, is it?
Old.
It's old.
Old.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thought it was.
Like me, it's old.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. New agenda item 32301, TIP paving intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, good to see me again. We are, with this, we're asking council to authorize the mayor to sign an intergovernmental agreement between us and Fayette County for the design and resurfacing of some various roads in Peachtree City. We've been working on this project for some time now. Federal funding grants take a while. We started this group of roads in 2019. So we're finally at this point where funding has been approved through the ARC and through GDOT for this resurfacing project. So we're finally at the point where we can enter into an agreement with Fayette County, because they are the facilitator of the funds for these type of grants. So we're requesting to enter an agreement with them for this, for our match, up to $486,717.10. Funds are available in the SPLOST fund for this as well. The particular roads are Kelly Drive, Huddleston, McIntosh, and Ebenezer. They have to be a certain classification road to meet the requirements for federal funding. And this is a great opportunity for us to leverage those funds. Are
Council
there any
questions?
questions?
I have a question. If
Sure.
we're going to be doing Huddleston Road, which at this point does not have any sewers going in there, would there be coordination, should the sewers go in there, with what you're doing in paving? Because you certainly don't want to pave it and then tear it all up to put a sewer in.
Correct. We are reaching out to the folks that are working on that sewer project, and we will definitely make sure that we don't pave it and then dig it up the next day.
Thank you.
All right, can I get a motion?
And this is just concerning the paving, doesn't have anything to do with the sewer. I mean, I say that because I have just the paving, because I have property on Huddleston Road, and yeah.
Yes,
So-
yes, just resurfacing, paving.
All right.
All right, can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion on new agenda item 032301, TIP paving intergovernment agreement.
To approve the agreement?
You make
To
a motion?
approve the agreement, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Can I get-
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 32302, consider bid for pedestrian beacon, North Peachtree Parkway, Kedron Boat Dock.
Yes, last one. We are recommending that council award a construction contract to Soul Construction LLC in the amount of $285,000 for the installation of a pedestrian hybrid beacon on North Peachtree Parkway, basically at the crossing with the boat docks. We put this out to bid in January. We had good turnout. We had 4 contractors show up, and we had 3 bids were received. The low bid is the $285,000. This gives a good example of some of the inflation that we've been experiencing with projects and construction and bids. We did practically an exact same installation on Crosstown Drive a couple years ago for $107,000. So it's more than doubled. So that's the world that we're living in right now. We do have funding available in the impact fee fund to pay for this, and we have reviewed the contractor's bid documents and the references and experience, and we find that it's acceptable.
Questions?
Any
Ken?
questions?
Question?
Yes, I have a question. Living up in that area, I go across that street by the boat dock all the time, and it's a dangerous one, so I'm really glad that we're doing that. The question I have is, how long is it going to take to get it done once this is approved?
This is another issue that we have in the post-pandemic world with materials and things. The support structures for the signal probably looking at 12 to 14 weeks to manufacture and ship once the shop drawings are approved. So if we authorize this tonight, we'll get the contractor on board. They will start the shop drawings. We'll review them, hopefully approve them, and then they will be sent off for then that will start that 12 to 14 weeks. So I would imagine probably approving those probably wouldn't start for another month or so for them to get all their ducks in a row.
I think the question I had, maybe I wasn't clear enough, is start to finish. Are we talking
just in
14
general,
weeks?
start to
Are we
finish?
talking 50 weeks? What
Oh,
amount of
okay.
time?
Once they had everything ready to go, the construction probably wouldn't take 90 days.
Thank you.
Sorry, I misunderstood the
No, that's
question.
maybe I didn't ask the question correctly either.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion?
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I like to make a motion that we approve new agenda item 032302, the bid for the pedestrian beacon at North Peachtree Parkway and Kedron Boat Dock, to Soul Construction for the amount of $285,000.
Second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearings, we have none. Council staff topics, Unified Development Ordinance kickoff presentation.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce our consultants from GMC. It is Glenn Coyne and Kalanis Johnson sitting back there. Glenn will be giving the presentation. And tonight they're going to be giving a kickoff presentation on the Unified Development Ordinance project. We've been so excited to see this kickoff.
Thank you, Robin. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'll try to be brief because I know you've already had a long meeting.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. What I want to do is very briefly just introduce who we are, who will be involved in this process, and a little bit about what we're going to do, and I'll show you the project schedule, and then we'll be done. A little bit about our company, Goodwin Mills Kaywood. We're 500 folks. We're all, it's employee-owned, headquartered in Alabama, but we have about 60 folks here in Georgia, including Kalanis and myself. And we do everything from architecture to landscape architecture to engineering and planning. And both Colonis and I are in the planning area, and we have a lot of experience with doing code work. And here's just some of the communities we've worked in. Just last June, we had our update approved in Jekyll Island, worked with them over a period of about 12 months and updated their codes. But we've also worked throughout other parts of Georgia and into Tennessee and Florida as well. But just wanted to leave you with the impression that we've done this before and we have experience and with communities like yours, fast growing, and a community that has a lot of unique aspects to it. While we go through this process, there will be several different layers of involvement. We will be working very closely with your staff. We met with them today, we got a little bit of a tour, and we have a list of issues that they've identified for us already as a starting point. There will be a steering committee. I think we're going to ask you to each appoint 2 people to that steering committee, which will meet with them roughly every other month throughout the process. There will be public meetings as well. We will hold open houses where they're not just going to listen to us lecture, but we want to hear from people about what their issues are with the development codes. And we will keep everybody updated with the process and the drafts as they're developed on the city website. Ultimately, we'll go to the Planning Commission. They'll have a review, and then when the code is ready, we'll come to the Mayor and Council for final adoption. I mentioned the partnership. What we've done is we've already set up bi-weekly meetings. We meet every other week with Robin and her team to make sure that we're not missing any deadlines. We'll work together to draft these revisions to the code sections and make sure that we're up to date with everything that's going on with current projects in the city. Public involvement, again, very important. The steering committee will meet at least 3 times. We'll have 2 public meetings so that folks have an opportunity to come out and see what we're talking about with the code updates. And I've also mentioned the website and the presentations that we'll make to the Planning Commission and the Mayor and Council. And sorry this is repetitive, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that there'll be plenty of opportunities and no one's going to slide any ordinances in under the door. And there will have to be a formal public hearing at the end. Because this would be a change to your code, it would be a change to the law. So there would, no matter what we do, at the very end, there will be a public hearing. The process, very briefly, why do you need this? Why are we talking about this? A lot of communities have gone through this process. What we try to do is make the code user-friendly and a logical order. Sometimes you have to hunt and peck throughout the code to find what it is you're looking for, and what we try to do is put things in an order that makes sense. It's good to take a look at your codes from time to time. Things are changed, there's new technologies, there's lots of things that come up. And we'll bring in some best practices from places that we've seen that we'd want to recommend for you. They might not work here, but some of them will. Mainly we want to go through the code and take away any conflicts. With a code that large and cumbersome, there's bound to be a place where it says one thing and you forgot to edit it in the other place, and we want to make sure that we take care of that. There's lots of new state laws and court rulings that deal with zoning and planning, and we want to make sure that you're up to date there. And then most foremost is the plan. Your comprehensive plan is there. The code should be written to implement what the recommendations are in that comprehensive plan. So we want to make sure that it's consistent there. I mentioned it's user-friendly. I'm not going to go through the whole slide. It will be available for folks who want to see it, but we won't hide code in the table of contents or in definitions. A lot of times you'll see that happen. We'll make sure that it's logical and things are found where they should be. We're going to set it up so that each individual code section has a number and a numeric reference. So you don't have to go through things like, well, it's in the 3rd line of the 2nd paragraph of section 8. We will have a number and a unique identifier so that everyone will know which section you're talking about. And we will use a lot of cross-referencing. That means if we mention it one time, we don't need to repeat it 10 times. We can refer you back to the place where it's referenced the first time. Clarity, consistency, we don't like to use jargon. We don't like to use a lot of acronyms. We don't want to use words that people don't understand. This is your code. Folks should be able to go online, look at it as a printed document and say, yeah, I understand what they're trying to do there, and not try to hide behind words that are not plain English. So we do propose to use clear words, lots of charts, lots of graphs, and make it easy for folks to use. What we are doing, I'm going to go through very quickly. We're preparing an updated, well-organized code for the city. The following the guidelines I just discussed. We will be bringing some best practices here. Administrative procedures, everything is by paper in your code. Lots of things are happening online now. That's an example of an update to the administrative procedures. New technology, ditto. You know, what's happening here in Peachtree City that's unique, that we can't just bring somebody else's code here and say, yeah, we'll just give it to them, that'll work. You have things happening here that are unique to Peachtree City. We'll make sure that's reflected. And then the list of key issues. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to hear from the public. We'd like to hear about what types of things you've had issues with in the code so that we can address those as we go through. What we are not doing. This is not changing anything about land use. It's not changing anybody's zoning. It's not changing opening up areas for new development. It's just rewriting the codes that you have. We're not changing any current or future land uses. And I can't emphasize any farther, we're not advocating any political ideology or policy. We're not no growth, we're not slow growth, we're not all growth. We are just updating the codes that you have. So I wanted to make that clear from the beginning. Our schedule, I liked when the librarian library director showed her arrow. We have the same arrow on our map, so I thought that was pretty cool. But we're starting here in March, and we hope to finish this up by February of next year. And you can see that we'll start out with the document reviews. We'll have the issues identified over the summer, the drafts hopefully written in September and November, and then we'll finish up with the final adoption hopefully in February of '24. And then down at the bottom you can see the steering committee will meet before the public workshops. Again, we'll repeat that and then work our way through each of those steering committee and public hearing meetings. So with that, again, I wanted to just be very brief, but again, introduce you to who we are, what we're going to be doing, and the schedule and the process that we're going to be going through. So be happy to answer questions if you have any.
I have a couple of comments, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on the planning commission for 11 years, and I really think I know the city pretty well until I finally gave up and joined the city council. Couple things, you know, I was very interested when Robin brought this up a long time ago, actually, because we had basically design standards in several parts of the city. Besides our overlay district, we had Lexington Circle, and we've had a couple other places.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were talking about bringing them together, I was pretty pleased about that. Then we started talking about some architectural standards being included. I was pleased that that was not part of what you had up there as part of your presentation. So we're talking about just design standards, not architectural standards. Is that true or not?
It's a little bit of language. Sometimes they get called design standards, sometimes they get called architectural standards. So I believe that we'll certainly be listening to what the public says, but I would be shocked to hear a general majority of the public saying that they wanted architectural standards.
That's kind of a almost
Well,
a
it
weasel word.
is because we're planners and our job is to listen to what the public says, and I don't want to presume what the public is going to say, but I will be surprised if they say they all of a sudden they wanted us to look like Helen, Georgia. So it is a little of a woo-woo
Yeah,
answer.
I'm
but
not talking about that kind of design standards, but at one time you were going to have Jefferson Brown included in the proposal. Is Jefferson Brown still included in this?
Not in this. They're doing the design standards for the corridor overlay.
Okay. Are we still going to have an overlay district?
Yes, sir. The 54 corridor overlay, yes, sir.
Okay. I really wish I could be involved in this, but I guess I'm going to be on the review panel here.
Of course
as a
you'll be
corporate-
involved in this. We will all be involved in this.
Not the way I want to be,
You
but
saw
that's...
all those meetings, Frank. We're all going to be involved in
said
this.
not the way I want to be. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to thank Glenn and Kalanis for coming out and helping us with this exciting project. I do have forms here. If the folks who are here, we always want to take the opportunity to get public input. I'm going to put them on the table. If there's anything that you want us to know about in advance, please fill out one of these and return it to us. And do remember that we're looking for those 2 appointees to the steering committee. Thank you.
One
I
question.
have one more question. When you start to do all the changes and moving around and adjustments and things, will there be something like track changes put in there so we know here is what it is originally and here's what I'm changing it to, even if it's the word "the"? we want to be able to see all of that. I'm assuming, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you'll be delivering the packages that way.
Yes, sir. Through the mayor, to the council member, yes, we learned that the hard way when a client asks that after the fact. So we'll begin to do it that way. Again, it's going to be reordered a little bit, but we'll be able to refer you back in a table and say this is where it was and this is where it is now, and then we'll show you how that wording changed. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you
Great
so much.
question. All right, thank you.
For everything. All right, council staff topics, first and second ordinance readings, Mr. DeStadio.
Not to reiterate what we've already talked about, we've talked about going back to having a first and second read on our ordinances. So I don't need to belabor the point. I don't know if we actually have to make a motion. Do we
Just give
want to
some
talk?
guidance to staff.
Could I ask one clarification?
Certainly.
The way it was done, and I don't know that we've had an ordinance recently that we've adopted that didn't go through some sort of a discussion process, but it was sort of a council staff topics, staff would present coming ordinances that you'd be considering.
Right.
That's different than, for example, the City of Noonan Charter requires 2 readings of ordinances before they can be approved. If it's a unanimous vote, council can waive the second reading.
Yes, I was going
So
to add.
what I'm trying to figure out is, do you want it to be what was being done, or I thought has been being done in terms of going through, presenting it to you, getting feedback, and then coming back for the second adoption? Or are you looking at an ordinance change to require 2 readings?
So I'm glad you said that, because what I was going to add to my comment was that we would have a normal first and second read unless the council decided it was a simple enough change that we would allow the city manager to do the simple change during our 2x2 meetings.
Okay, so you're looking for an actual reference in our ordinances to having 2 readings?
Yes, with the exception that
With a waiver?
Yes.
If council
With the-
unanimous?
Now I'm confused about what you want, Mr. DeStadio. With a waiver that council could decide unanimously that a first reading is all that's necessary.
Yes.
Is that the way you said the City of Noonan Charter?
That's the way the City of Noonan Charter, that's how they have to go through adoption of ordinances.
Because
They just had
we-
an annexation they approved. It was a 4-2 vote, so they had to bring it back for a second reading.
And Ted,
If
that-
it's 7-0 and they all approve it, then you can do a waiving of the second read as a part of the motion.
Ted, that's because there's a lot of ordinances that just have a few changes that he'd like to make. And he talks to us during our weekly updates with him. And if it's a simple change, there's no reason to bring it back and forth.
That's
So-
something for you guys to decide.
But ordinance changes have to come to a council agenda, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
we're
Okay,
not-
so you're looking for a true ordinance amendment in the council procedures. It'll be in chapter 2 of your code that will make this provision.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Policy-
Frank.
Council staff topics, policy 814, public comment guidelines, Mr. DeStadio.
Well, that one is going to probably cause a little bit aggravation, but I believe that everybody here really wants to listen to the citizens. And I know that we've talked a lot about the time frame associated with citizens being able to get up and talk. And that, God knows, we've heard a lot from the Planterra Ridge families when they came in with their younger kids all the time, not knowing really that in the background, we've been dealing with this for a long, long time. Not just with the attorney, but many of us had been out there ourselves, on again, off again, just actually witnessing it. So as part of what I wanted to bring up was, I think that we ought to consider doing away with our 2-minute time limit for public comment. And I'd like to say that we go to a 3-minute time limit. Let the individuals have 3 minutes and actually do away with the 20-minute cap. But doing away with the 20-minute cap comes with some responsibilities for the individuals themselves. I mean, we've all sat through, I don't know how many Planterra Ridge kids standing up here. And I think that obviously the mayor runs the meetings and has to run the meetings. And that if we have an individual or 15 or 20 people that want to get up and speak and they all want to have it on unlimited time, I think that the mayor ought to be able, just the way I did when I was the chairman of the planning commission, to ask the next person in line, if you're going to say the same thing over and over and over again, would you please relinquish some of your time for the next person? I think that's the mayor's responsibility. And in fact, if not, we can, maybe even some of the council members can have a point of order and ask the same thing. But we need to control the time for everybody. We've got a lot of people sitting out here, that staff, that don't need to be sitting through. We can sit here as long as we want to and listen to you, but I think that it's time that we maybe raise the time limit. So I'd like to open that up for at least discussion.
Anybody else?
I mean, I agree. I mean, 3 minutes is not too much time. I think one time we had so many people, and I don't know how we do this, we had so many people talking that everybody's time was like limited, so.
52 seconds.
Yeah, so how do we go about doing something so that, well, I guess if it's a hot topic, we kind of know what the discussion's gonna be like. So maybe the mayor could say, okay, how many people are gonna say that?
Of course.
The traffic is a problem cutting through at 4 o'clock and through Planterra.
Yeah.
Is there anything new?
Yeah.
Right. So,
When you open it up, it's open. I mean, when you give everybody the right to speak for 2 minutes or 3 minutes,
Understand?
they have the right
But
to speak for that time period, even if they're repeating what the person before them said.
understand that,
That's
but
the difference between a public hearing, like in a zoning context, and a true public comment scenario.
I understand, but I don't see why the mayor, as the board director, so to speak, can't ask the next person in line, if you're gonna repeat the same thing, could you limit some of your time to the next speaker?
You can ask that, but the next speaker can say, no, thank you,
Yes?
and have their 3 minutes.
Yeah,
There's also other ways, there's a couple different ways to skin this cat, because we have not addressed this policy. It was adopted in '06, and it hasn't been touched since. I think there's been 2 times that I've seen where there were more speakers than time. If you divided, so 10 speakers, 2 minutes apiece, 20 minutes. I think there's been 2 occasions where you've had less than the full allotment of time for each speaker. The chair can always say, we're gonna extend the 20-minute period to however long it takes for everybody to get 2 minutes. The council can also make a motion that would give that each speaker 2 minutes of time to extend it from 20 minutes to, if there's 16 people, 32 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, or we can change the policy. I mean, but I just want you guys to know there are different options out there on this issue.
So could we, and I'm thinking out loud here, we say, okay, 3 minutes per person. Oh, wait a minute, we're gonna go over the 20 minutes. How many people is there? Let's limit it to 2 minutes a person. Or is that, would that have to be, we wouldn't do that, we
I
would
probably
just
would,
say.
if you
Extend
say
out the
they have
time.
3 minutes apiece, I would not deviate from that 3
So leave
minutes
it
apiece.
at 3 minutes apiece.
Except for the scenario where we had to, when we had more speakers than time.
Okay,
How about if you, I agree with you on the 3 minutes, just extend the 20 minutes to 30. You've got 10 people. If we need to extend that because you have 5 more or whatever, then the vote of council to extend it or whatever, and it's done.
That's
I
fine.
agree, as long as there's no repeats, and we have to
Well,
put that in the
no, you
words of the
can't-
mayor.
If you give them the right to speak,
Yep,
You gotta give them the right to speak.
okay. But
It's
what
not-
happens if they say the same darn thing?
We listen to it the
We
same
listen to it for
time.
another
Get paid
3
the big
minutes?
bucks for it.
Okay.
We listen to it.
Okay.
I agree with that. 3 minutes each.
3 minutes,
So
30
it's
minutes
30
max, and we
minute
go
max.
from there.
It's hard for a lot of people to say what they need to say in 3 minutes.
Out
I'm-
of respect for the fact that this is the business meeting of the city of Peachtree City, I suggest that we make it 3 minutes, 30 minutes, and put it at the end of the agenda. Fayetteville has it at the end of the agenda, a lot of cities have it at the end of the agenda. We can get through our business and then spend whatever time we want to, 30 minutes, extend it if we want to extend it at the end of the.
I would say,
agenda.
since Mayor, you run the meeting, that would be your option.
let's think on that.
This is another thought.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have another thought on it. I don't know how we address it, but somebody might bring up something and then we go, yeah, okay, thanks for your comment, and that's it. We want to have something where we have some kind of follow-up to, yeah.
No, that's not what public
We-
comment is.
I'm
Public
talking about
comment is-
not necessarily that meeting, but maybe another meeting or on down the road, we go, yeah, Citizen A brought up, Citizen A brought up that he wants to do, give out clean needles to heroin addicts, and we're not gonna talk about that, right? Or is that something we would have to vote on to say that, or?
I don't understand your question. It's
So somebody
always up
gets
to
a-
us. If someone comes up and says something we think, gee, that's a good idea. I gotta tell you, 9 years ago, I was all about backyard hens. And we didn't put in an ordinance, and I actually don't remember why. But if somebody comes up and says we need backyard hens, well, of course, we all have the option. We're the
Okay, so at
ones
that point, we would say, okay, yeah, we're gonna talk about this.
We
again
don't
now.
commit, we're good listeners.
No, but I
and
mean,
in the
at some
coming weeks-
point before, after the comment, at some point
We can
of time
take
in
it
the
up.
future. Okay.
Of course we
I
can take
guess-
it up.
I guess
At
we
the
can do
end-
that now.
Mr. Prebor, I don't know where you're getting all this extra staff time, I gotta say. We've got a pretty covered up staff right now, and we seem to be loading them up over and over and over again. I think we need to be careful about what we ask them to do, just saying.
Okay,
Phil, at the end of every meeting, there's council staff topics.
right.
If somebody brings up backyard hens,
And we want to, yeah.
one of you five can say, I would like to see what an ordinance looks like to allow backyard hens.
Yeah.
You have
Okay.
it on your
Yeah, it's
agenda
there.
every
I
meeting.
get it. I get it.
All right, any further discussion?
I haven't had a chance to comment. When we have hot topics, there are times we get a lot of people in here and they want to talk about something that it's a hot topic for the city. And 3 minutes may not be enough. Maybe we need to look at 4 minutes, and I would leave that at the discretion of the mayor to decide whether, you know, this is a hot one. We've only got 4 speakers, but it's really a hot topic. Let's give them 4 minutes apiece so they can really expand on what is it they're gonna talk about. Now, maybe, I don't know what everyone else thinks on that, but comes a time that we may have to give a little bit more time to the citizens in speaking. And I'm not saying make it as a general rule, 3 minutes is fine, but there should be a time where you can expand that up to 4 minutes for
Clint,
those topics.
that's the mayor's call now.
Yeah, and that's what I just said. It's up to the mayor.
If I might, just to kill this thing, is if you have that sort of hot topic, it's already an agenda item. It's a public hearing anyway, and we have the ability to extend that time built in already, do
Right.
we not?
Okay.
I would really urge you to set whatever the limits are per
And leave it.
speaker and leave them. Because inevitably, if you allow one 4 minutes, but only allow this one 3 minutes,
Right.
I got you.
you now have an argument about how you were censoring or not giving a full opportunity to speak, and that it was allegedly based on their viewpoint. And next thing you know, I'm in federal court on a 1983 case, trying to say why it was we allowed that person to go to 4 minutes, but kept the other person at 3.
Okay.
Ted,
So-
now I know why we pay you. Thank you.
I'm getting paid by the hour to stay here, so I'm glad to stay here all night. I joke.
So just to
But-
end this comment, just to end this session, can we just say that it's going to be 3 minutes, 10 minutes each, whatever? I
3
mean,
minutes, 30 minutes at
it's-
the end of the agenda.
yes,
And
thank you.
Yeah.
Ted, will you work with
There's
Bob
a
on that?
policy, I will work with staff to make
Thank
the
you,
change
Madam
to
Mayor.
CAR 8-14.
Thank you. Do we have executive session?
Yes, we do. We need to discuss real estate and pending or threatened litigation.
Mayor, then I move that we adjourn to executive session for threatening or pending litigation and real estate.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.